Hello everyone, welcome once again to Brandao Collection. Today I thought it would be exciting to share with all of you our graded comic book collection. What we're going to do is we're actually going to jump over to another camera angle and go through the individual different pieces we have here in the collection. So we'll jump right over into it and go over the exciting items we have here. So sit back, relax, as we jump over and go through those comic books. Thank you once again for joining us. So to get started into our CGC comic book collection, what we're going to do is we're actually going to break this up, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to focus mostly on our vintage types of comics that we have graded here, starting with mostly our silver, bronze, and kind of going into a little bit. Our first item is actually going to be a Golden Age piece, the only Golden Age piece we actually have graded in the collection, and the only vintage DC items. We do have some DC items coming up in the more modern graded items, but out of the more vintage stuff, we only have one item, and that first one is going to be right here. It is Superman number 59, graded at a 2.5. I just really enjoy having this comic in the collection, having it graded, having it protected. I love the Golden Age covers. I just like the colors of them, just the way they look, and of course the history that's behind them from the early days of these characters. Looks really, really great. Very excited to have this one in the collection, just from the sake of it being from the Golden Age and having a nice, presentable piece here for this Superman comic. Now, moving away from Golden Age, getting more into the Silver Age, and going into the majority of our comics, which are Marvel related. What we're going to do is we're actually going to start with some of the Spider-Man pieces. First off, we actually have a couple comics that pertain to the same theme. Starting off with the first one, have right here, Secret Wars number 8.0, signed by both John Beatty and Michael Zeck. There on the cover, the origin of the alien symbiote black suit. Starting off our little theme here, going into Venom and the black suit itself. So, famous cover, great to have this in a higher grade. Their verified signatures by cbcs. Looks really great. But going into our next book that goes off of that, we have Amazing Spider-Man 252. First appearance of the black suit in the Amazing Spider-Man series, which it actually ties up with Marvel Team Up 141 for that first appearance of the black costume as part of the full continuity. And of course, an homage to the original Amazing Fantasy 15 cover there, but with Spider-Man in his brand new black suit. One of my personal favorites. 7.5 white pages, looks great. And then the big one itself to go along with that. You can't have those without having this one. And that is right there. Amazing Spider-Man 300, the first full appearance of Venom. Graded at a 9.2 CGC. Famous cover by Todd McFarlane there. Last time Spider-Man has the black suit, of course, that going over to Eddie Brock to become Venom. A cover that's homaged many, many times since then, just because of how famous this cover is. But great to have this one in the collection in a high grade with that first appearance of Venom. So keeping along with Spider-Man, but moving on to a little bit more backwards, timeline-wise. And another graded comic. We have right here another one from CBCS. Spider-Man number 41, first appearance of the Rhino, signed by the man himself, Stan Lee. This is actually the only comic we have in the collection that is signed by Stan Lee as of right now. But excited to have this one in here. Verified signature, yellow label by CBCS. Verified that he signed this back in 2015. 4.0 grade. Part of my Amazing Spider-Man run as well. And then for our final Spider-Man graded comic book, this is the biggest of all the graded comic books we have here in the Spider-Man collection. One that I was looking for many years as a comic book collector, which I eventually actually got as a gift from my wife. She found this, and happy to have it in my collection. And there we go, Spider-Man 129, first appearance of the Punisher, in a 4.0 grade. One of my most sought after books prior to having it in the collection. Very excited to have it in the collection. One of my personal favorite characters, one of my personal favorite covers and comics in general. So this was one that I had to have, and one that will stay here in the collection as one of the biggest pieces we have here. Alright, so sticking with Marvel, but jumping away from Spider-Man, the next book we have here is another big character in the MCU, which is Captain Marvel. And this right here is Marvel Superheroes number 13, the first appearance of Carol Danvers. And this is also the second appearance of Captain Marvel in general. So great to have this one. 6.5 graded CGC. Actually even has a Captain Marvel label there up at the top, those customized ones. Another one that I actually got a gift from my wife. So you see a running trend here that she's actually very good to me. But we'll see there. Next book here. Daredevil 181, The Death of Elektra, in a 9.0. Not a super valuable book, but it is a key book to comic book history, a big storyline that's been used many times in the different Daredevil properties, such as the Ben Affleck movie, and even the Netflix TV show used this storyline. So just an important piece to comic book history there, done by Frank Miller. And then before we're even done with this collection, we're already going to hit the heavy hitter. The biggest book of the entire CGC collection, whether it be the vintage books all the way to the modern books. The biggest one we have here in the collection, even at a lower grade, is going to be right here. And that is an Incredible Hulk 181, the first full appearance of Wolverine. Now you can see here it is only a 0.5 grade. The reason for that is that when I purchased this book raw many years ago, I wasn't as experienced in keeping track of the values of these books or the conditions of these books, and I didn't realize at the time when I purchased it that it was missing some pages in the middle of the book. So when it was sent to CGC, they automatically downgraded it because it is missing some pages that do affect the story. So because of that, it's considered incomplete. So I got that 0.5 grade, but even with the 0.5 grade, still got the blue label there at the top. So I just love it. I mean, here in the slab itself, it presents very well. The cover looks wonderful. It looks exactly the way that I want it to look here in my collection. It's protected in there. So as long as it's in my collection, it doesn't really matter to me as much what that grade is really is. All that matters is that it is here, and it is an important book to myself, to my collection, something I've always dreamed of having, and I have it here in the collection, even at the lower grade. Next book, another key book, another big one. More modern, I should say. And that is going to be New Mutants 98, the first appearance of Deadpool. One of the biggest, I would say, keys from the 90s. A big, big character that's right in the movies right now. Hopefully Deadpool coming up in the MCU now that Disney has Fox. But was excited to get this piece years ago before the prices skyrocketed once the first 2 Deadpool movies came out. Got it in a nice high grade there at a 9.4, graded by CGC. And to go along, we had our first appearance of Deadpool. And then the next one here is actually the second appearance of Deadpool, X-Force number 2, 9.4, cbcs graded. Once again, not a valuable book, but if you have that first appearance of Deadpool, you gotta have the second one at least. So, great to have those two together. Next book is a famous cover. Another one that's signed. And that is right here. That is Silver Surfer number 34, signed by Jim Starlin, the creator of Thanos. Their famous Thanos cover with Silver Surfer flying right in front of him. You can see that signature down there at the bottom. 8.5. This one was actually witnessed by CGC at the comic show that I was at back in 2018. So I was able to get this one graded right after the moment it was signed. Next one, another character that I love and happy to have in my collection. Go. We have the Tomb of Dracula number 10, first appearance of Blade the Vampire Slayer. Famous cover, of course, famous character and book in general, 5.0 graded CGC. As a child of the 90s and early 2000s, those early Marvel films, including the Blade films, were very important to my love of all things comic books and comic book films. So definitely needed to have Blade here in the collection to represent not only my love for comic books in general, but to comic book films and the different characters that really made me fall in love with those. And then our final book, at least for the more vintage types of books, is a book for a storyline that's upcoming in the future of the MCU. And that is What If number 10, the first time that Jane Foster as Thor. Now, this particular story is not part of the Marvel comic continuity. Eventually, it would become part of the continuity later on in the future, once she actually officially did become Thor in the 2000s. But this was kind of that storyline back in the day, back in 1978, that started that thought of Jane becoming Thor. And now we have Natalie Portman coming back for the next Thor movie, Love and Thunder, to portray this version of Jane Foster, of her becoming Thor. So very excited to see how they represent that in the movie, and excited to have an 8.5 graded version of this first appearance of Jane as Thor in What If number 10. So those are all of our vintage, kind of Silver Age, Bronze Age, and one Golden Age comic book that are graded. What we're going to do now is we will actually switch over and show you the rest of our graded collection that is more of the modern types of books. So sit back, relax, and we will be right back. Alright, welcome back. Now to wrap things up as part of our CGC and CBCS graded comic book collection, we're going to go into some of the more modern books we have in the collections. Now, one of the main artists that I personally collect is the artist J. Scott Campbell. I have a lot of different books by him that are raw, but I do have a few items graded here in the collection, and we'll actually start with those. The first item we have here is Amazing Spider-Man number 25. This is the C cover, provided from the J. Scott Campbell store. This is the Virgin cover, and it is signed right there in red by J. Scott Campbell. graded by CBCS with that signature verified by them as well. This one being a 9.8 graded. Looks really nice. One of my personal favorites of his. Great cover. Next book. We have a couple of these different variations of Avengers number 8. Another 9.8 graded, verified signature by J. Scott Campbell right there on the cover. This is the Mary Jane line of Avengers number 8 from 2017. This being, of course, the Captain America cover. There were various different ones. So here we have the Captain America cover. Next, we have the Thor cover. So there we go. Once again, signed by J. Scott Campbell and verified with a 9.8 by CBCS. Next book. It's an homage there to Spider-Man from the 90s. We have Black Cat number 1, Signature Series 9.8, graded by CGC. There, signed by J. Scott Campbell again, homaging the famous Spider-Man cover from 1990. This one's signed by him back in 2019. Nice to get that yellow label verifying the signature with a full 9.8 grade. Next book we have here, another signed book. We have Domino number 1, another J. Scott Campbell cover, 9.8, verified signature by CBCS. This was my personal favorite out of the different covers he did back on this run back in 2018. So this is the one I sent in to get graded. Excited to get a 9.8 back. These next two are actually two that I recently got in and did a comic haul video a while back when these came in. First one being right here. Gwen Stacy number 1 from the series from last year from 2020, signed by J. Scott Campbell in purple right there at the bottom. 9.8 Signature Series CGC. These covers just really pop from, of course, his style and also the colors and everything. They just look fantastic, especially the lighting on this one. It looks really, really great. Next one we have here, same series, different cover. There we go. Gwen Stacy number 1, cover number 2, or cover B, I should say. 9.8 Signature Series, signed by J. Scott Campbell there at the bottom. Now with both Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane there on the cover. And then, starting off the last two of our J. Scott Campbells that we have graded. Another Gwen Stacy, there we go, Spider-Gwen number 9 from 2016, 9.8, verified signature by CBCS. Signed right there on the side. We have our last graded J. Scott Campbell. And that right there is X-Men Legends #1, 9.8 graded, signature series, yellow label. Cover, this is the C cover of this particular series. Right there with Dazzler on the cover. Really pops once again and looks fantastic. I love the kind of 80s and 90s style when it comes to these books. Next book. books we have in the collection as of right now. Always looking to add future things into the collection. Always looking to see if some of our raw books we have to send them in to get graded. But trying to look to see what looks the best on those graded collections. So if you enjoyed this video, please always remember to like and subscribe. Remember to hit that bell notification to be notified when we post new videos. You can also follow us on all of our social media feeds to be updated on future content and to keep track of the daily posts that we make on different content, including comic books, videos, 1/6 scale figures, and much, much more. And always remember, keep on collecting.